I'm going to start this off with a little story that sort of acts as the catalyst for the purpose of making this video. A little under a year back, I matched with this girl on Hinge, and generally my rule of thumb is if we're having a decent conversation back and forth, I'm going to waste little to no more time texting and ask the girl out. This can feel a bit preemptive for some, that's fine. I'm not a big texter, so this is just how I like to roll. So I matched with this girl, and for the purposes of this video, we're going to call her Lil Shorty 9000. Lil Shorty 9000 and I text for a bit. The vibe feels pretty good, so I ask her out. She tells me she wants to get to know me a little bit more, that's fine. And looking back in hindsight, it's a good thing she said so as well, because pretty soon after we had this disagreement, which sort of brought to light just how incompatible both of us were. We were talking about Will Smith's slap incident at the Oscars, and while we both agreed it was wrong of Will to slap Chris, Lil Shorty made it clear to me she wasn't even going to watch any of Will Smith's movies anymore because of the incident. I'm not trying to cast shade, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but that includes the criticism I have of her own. It's no secret that stories have a unique power. They stir emotions, raise questions, challenge perceptions, and often open up windows into the human experience in ways that nothing else can. But here's the thing, when we start tying the artist's personal life to their work, we run the risk of stifling that very power. Just because an author's voice becomes part of the work, doesn't mean the author is the work. If we can't separate the art from the artist, then we've got a big problem on our hands, not just for the audience, but for the creators themselves. If we're constantly judging an author by their personal life and their flaws, how many voices, how many stories do we risk silencing? We've all seen headlines about writers and other artists being problematic, doing or saying things that have nothing to do with their artistic output. In some cases, we're talking about actions so awful that they leave us questioning whether we can ever look at their work the same way again. But here's the catch. While we're processing all that, we're missing the larger issue, the art itself. We're too busy casting judgment on the person behind the art to see the art for what it truly is. Every time an artist creates something, they're putting part of themselves into that work. But those bits of themselves aren't necessarily everything they are as a person. They're just one part of a much bigger puzzle. What if we rejected every author whose personal life we found objectionable? We'd lose so many powerful voices. Writers like Orson Scott Card, for instance, have been criticised for their personal and homophobic beliefs. But take Ender's Game. It's a book about empathy, sacrifice, and understanding. How can we ignore that just because the author himself has controversial opinions? Art is, at its core, supposed to be a shared experience. A good book isn't just the author's, it's everyone's once it's been released into the world. The writer's job is to create a world that allows the reader to escape, to experience, to learn, and to grow. It doesn't matter if the writer personally believes in something that rubs you the wrong way. The magic is in what they're offering to the reader. Let's look at someone like Woody Allen. The man's work has been scrutinized heavily because of his personal history, specifically his relationship with Soon-Yi Previn, who was his stepdaughter. People are divided. Some will forever see his personal actions as unforgivable and think that his films can never be looked at the same way. Others say they can still enjoy Annie Hall or Manhattan for what they are. But, in either case, the art has its own existence, separate from the artist. And that's the key here. The artist is not their work. The work takes on a life of its own once it's out there. When we look at Annie Hall, for example, it's not a film made to glorify Allen's personal life. It's a story about love, identity, and the complexities of relationships. That's universal. Trying to erase that because we can't stomach the artist's choice outside of the camera lens is, honestly, more of a disservice to us as the audience than it is to the artists themselves. But here's the bigger issue. If we hold the artist's flaws against the art itself, we risk entering a dangerous territory, one where we start censoring and cancelling art that challenges us and makes us feel uncomfortable. Should every problematic person's work be erased from the cultural conversation? Because, trust me, the line is constantly shifting. We could end up killing entire swathes of literature, films, and stories if we can't embrace the idea that an artist is separate from their work. Imagine if we started cancelling every author who said or did something controversial. We would erase too much, limit too many voices. The act of writing or telling a story is inherently a human one. Writers, like everyone else, are flawed. They don't live in some perfect bubble where they have all the answers, and they shouldn't. Art that challenges us, that makes us think, that makes us question what we believe, is uncomfortable by nature. But that discomfort is important. It helps us evolve. People grow, they change, they evolve, and the world of writing and storytelling is no different. If we were to look at someone like Mark Twain through today's lens, considering his racist language, his problematic views on people of colour, then we'd likely reject his works outright. And yes, his personal views reflect the biases of his time, but The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn is a sharp critique of those very same biases. It forces readers to confront the realities of racism, human nature, and morality. It's about understanding that the world an artist creates is not an endorsement of everything they've said or done in their own life. Art can be messy, but it's in that mess where we often find the most valuable lessons. At the end of the day, there's a bigger question that needs answering. How much power do we want to give to the artist's personal life over their art? Because if we let every problematic thing someone says or does completely overshadow their work, then we risk taking away the very thing that makes art powerful in the first place, its ability to exist beyond the artist and speak directly to the audience. It becomes impossible to appreciate the beauty, depth, or relevance of a story if we're always thinking about the artist's personal flaws. We need to give ourselves permission to enjoy something for what it is, not constantly measure it against the personal life of its creator. Yes, it's important to hold artists accountable, to push back against harmful views, and to criticise when needed. But it's just as important to recognise that the art itself, its themes, its story, its emotional impact, can be meaningful and valuable, regardless of who created it. Now, if you disagree with me still, let me know in the comments what you think I've overlooked, because I'd be very interested to see what you have to say. My name's Geordie. I'm a videographer, writer, and animator. A link to my science fantasy debut novel is in the description. Hope to see you all next time.